In this video, we will add all the core functionality to our to-do app. We can add to-dos, check them as done, delete to-dos, and we also want to add features like delete all to-dos, view all the unfinished tasks, and view all the completed tasks. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Let's write some more function in our API class to perform the to-do operations. First, we want to initialize our database with the client which we have in our main.dat file, and then we want to add one more dependency to our pubspec.yaml file. Let's go to pub.dev. Let's search for UUID, installing, and then copy this dependency, add it to your pubspec.yaml file. This dependency will help you with providing unique IDs. Now let's get this dependency. Go to terminal, in the root directory, hit flutter pub get, and we are done. Now let's initialize this UUID in our API class. Right click over here and in show context, import this UUID.dat package. After initializing UUID, let's create a to-do model. In the models folder, I'll create a new file, to-do model. And here I have written my to-do model. So our to-do model has a title, description, is done boolean, user ID and a doc ID. Let's go back to our APIs class and let's write the create to-do function. And here I have written my create to-do function. It's of future type and the return type is void. It's an asynchronous function, and inside the try catch block, we are using this get user ID function to get the user ID, and after we get the user ID, we are creating a to-do model. So here I want to get a unique doc ID, so I have used the UUID package. Basically there are two versions in which you can generate unique IDs. I'm using the version 1 method, and then I'm creating my to-do model. As the title, I'm passing this title parameter, and as the description, I'm passing this description parameter. And whenever a to-do is created, I want to set the isDone value to false. And here in the user ID, I'm setting the user ID of the user, which we will later use to fetch the to-dos of a particular user. And then we are giving it a unique doc ID from this UUID method. And after we have created this to-do model, we want to set it to our database. By using our database client, we are using this create document method to create a new document. And here we want to pass in some parameters, the database ID, the collection ID, and the document ID with a unique ID which we have here. And as the data, we want to pass this to-do model as a JSON. And as you can see, if I control click, by using this method, we are converting our to-do data to a JSON. We will be using this database ID and collection ID a lot of time, and it's quite possible that we may mess up with the ID numbers. So let's define it inside a credential class so that whenever we need any ID, we'll just call them from the credential class. Then I have created this credential class. Then we have inside this credential class two strings of static type so that we can access them anywhere in our code base. Also, it's a good practice to add all of your API endpoint and project ID here. So let's do that. So I'll go to my main.dat file, and here I have my endpoint. So I'll copy this, and in the credentials at endpoint, I'll paste this. And similarly, as the project ID, I'll copy and paste it here. Now in the main.dat file, instead of this endpoint, we will use which we have defined at the credentials class. Okay, endpoint credentials dot project ID, and here also we want to import the credentials.dat file. So just right click, show context action, and here we are importing the credentials.dat file. We need to add in this database ID and collection ID. We'll do that later, but now let's create some more to-do functions. Next, I have written this get to-dos function, which is of future type, and it returns a list of to-do models. Basically, we want to return all of the to-dos that a particular user has by matching the user ID with the current logged in user ID. Here also we are using this get user ID function, and after we get the user ID, we are accessing our database by this list document method to return all of those documents inside our this database ID and collection ID, where in the queries, if the user ID is same as the current logged in user ID, then we want to return this document, and then we want to pass all of the documents in that collection as our response. After we get the response, we are using this method to return it as a list of to-do models. And then finally, we want to return this to-do model. It is also inside a try catch block. So if there is any error, we will rethrow this try block. Here I have written the update to do function, which takes a to do model, and using this update document method, it updates the to do data. And finally, I have also written this delete to do function, which takes a to do, and by using our database client delete document method, we are just deleting this to do using the document ID. Here I have written the delete all to do function, which will take a list of to do models. We are using a for each loop to iterate through all the to do models in this all to dos list. And then we want to use this delete document method to delete each to do in this list individually. Next, I have written this get unfinished to do function, which returns list of to do models. It's a future type function. Here in our database client, we are using this list documents model to get all of the documents in our collection where it satisfies this query. This query says that if the user ID is same as the current user ID and we want our isDone value to be not equals to true, that is false. So if the user ID value inside this database ID and collection ID is same as the current logged in user ID, and if the isDone value is false, then it will return the document. Now we have all of our documents in this response variable, and then we are using this method to convert it to a list of to-do models as out models, and then we are returning this out models. Here, this is also inside a try catch block, so if we get any error, then it will rethrow to this block. And finally, I have written this get completed to-dos function. It's very similar to our get unfinished to-do function, but in the queries, now we want only those documents in which the isDone value is true, because the to-do is completed. And then after we get the response, we are using the same method to convert it into a list of to-do models, and then we want to store it inside this out models, and finally we want to return this out model. That's all of the function we need to write to perform all of our to-do functionalities. Now let's implement them in our application. Now let's create a new database collection in our Appwrite project so that we can get the database ID and the collection ID. So let's go to localhost and let's go to our to-do app project. And here, let's go to database, create database, enter database name. I'm creating to-do database, and then create collection. And then we need to create the attributes. Let's go to our to-do model. And here in the to-do model, we have all of these attributes. So we have a title, description, isDone boolean, user ID, and doc ID. Let's create all of them. And size, let's give it a size of 1000 characters. Create. Go to attributes, create new attribute. Let's give it a size of 1000 characters. So we have created all of the attributes. Now let's go to our database and we'll copy this database ID, and let's go to our credential file, and here we paste in the database ID. We can also get the collection ID. Click here to copy the collection ID, and let's paste it here. So we have our database and collection ready. Now we need to add to-dos to our collection, and we will fetch them in our client tab to show the user all of his to-dos. For that, let's go to the screen folder. In the home page, in the app bar, instead of this notes app title, let's show the user name and user ID. For that, already using the future builder widget, we are fetching the account details, and using this text widget, we are showing the name and email ID of the user. So I'll just click on this pin to minimize it, and let's copy this future builder widget, and instead of this title, let's place this future builder widget so that in the app bar, we have the current logged in user name and email ID. And in the body, from the collection of to-dos, let's show the user only those to-dos that this particular user has created. As in the attributes, we are also asking for the user ID. We will just match the user ID with the current logged in user, and that's how we will know that the to-do belongs to the current user. And that's how we'll filter the current user's to-dos from the collection of all to-dos. We have already written that function here in the APIs class. Here we have that function. In order to do that, in the homepage state class, let's define a variable data, which is a list of to-do models. And in the body, let's use future builder widget. As the future, we are calling this get to do function from our APIs class. And then if the connection state is done and the future returns some data, we'll store it as a list of to-do models in this data variable as a list of to-do models. And then we are using this list view builder widget to build these list styles according to the data that we get here. So this is a typical list view builder. Here we are passing the item count as the length of this data list, and the item builder returns this list style, which has a leading checkbox, a title, which is a text widget which shows the to-do title, and the subtitle of the list style also has a text widget which shows the to-do description, and the list style also has a trailing icon button, which is basically our delete button. Inside this onPress method, we are first initializing this delete to-do model with the current to-do data, and then we want to remove this to-do from the list of current user to-do. So we are removing it by using the set state so that it is reflected in the UI as well. And then from the APIs class, we are using this delete to-do function, and we are passing here the to-do model so that this to-do model is deleted by using the doc ID. Similarly, in the leading property of the list style, we also have a checkbox, which is the to-do done checkbox. And inside the checkbox widget, we have this value parameter where we are initializing it with the current to-dos is done value. And if it is null, then we want to initialize it with false. And then we also have this onChange method, that is, if the user clicks on the checkbox, if it is checked or unchecked, according to that, we get this Boolean value, and we want to set it to our current to-dos is done value. And then using this set state method, we want to assign that value to our current to-dos is done value. And finally, we also want to update our to-dos is done value. So we want to use our update to-do function from the APIs class, and we are passing the current to-do so that the current to-do is updated in our database collection. With this, we are done with our to-do list styles. So I'll just hit this minimizing pin, and then we also have a default circular progress indicator, which will be shown until this future gets the data. We'll right click, show context action. We need to add a constant here. Now to create a new to-do, we'll also add a floating action button, which will take us to the create to-do page, and there we will have a form where we can create a new to-do. So first, let's create a create to-do screen. So in the screens, I'll create a new Dart file, create to-do page, import material.dart, and I'll create a stateful widget. In this create to do page state class, let's initialize two empty string variables, title and description. We will use these variables to store the title and description that the user enters, and then we will send them to the create to do function, which we have written in our APIs class to create a new to do. Instead of this container, we want to use a scaffold widget here. In the app bar, as the title, we are passing this text widget, and we also want this title to be at the center of the app bar. And then in the body, we have this column widget with some padding. We just have the horizontal padding, and then inside this column widget, we have our text field, the title text field here. And whenever the value in the text field changes, we want to set the title variable with that value using this set state method. And then we have the description text field, and similarly here also, whenever the value in the text field changes, we want to set it to the description variable. And then we finally have this elevated button which says create to do, and whenever this button is pressed, we are calling this onPressed method, which basically creates a new to do document in our to dos collection. It uses the create to do function from our APIs class, and we are also passing here the title and the description of our to do. Then we want to use this then method so that after this function is executed, we want to pop our current create to do screen. So now we have our create to do page where we can add in new to dos, and we also have our home page where we can see all of our to dos. Let's go to our Appwrite console. We can see that we don't have any index as of now in the to do collection, but here you can see in the APIs class, we have used this user ID query, and I think we have also used another query for user ID and is done field here. Now let's create those indexes. Click on create index, name it user ID, and index type is key. Select attribute, and we want to select this user ID. The order really doesn't matter. I'm keeping it ascending, and then create. So our index is now created. We'll create another index. Let's name it is done, and its type is key. We'll select the first attribute. We have here two attributes, that is user ID and is done. So I'll select the first attribute, which is user ID, and then select the second attribute is done. And let's also keep this ascending. It doesn't matter if you keep it ascending or descending. Then click on create. Great. Now we have created all the necessary indexes required. It's showing a fail tag here, but trust me, it works perfectly. This may be just a minor bug. Now finally, let's go to settings. and click on this plus button in update permissions. Click on any, and now we want to assign them create, read, update, and delete roles. And now we want to update our permission. So we have updated our permission. Now our app should work. So now let's run the application on an emulator. I have started my Pixel 4a emulator. Now let's hit this run button. As you can see, now we don't have any error. Now in the home page, let's create a floating action button which will take the user to the create to do page, and there the user can create a new to do. So in the home page, I have added a floating action button here, clicking on which the user is routed to the create to do page using this navigator.push replacement method. So now we'll reload the application. As you can see, now we do have a floating action button here, clicking on which we go to create new to do page. In our scaffolds app bar, we are using this leading icon button to navigate back to the home page. And when we press on it, we'll go back to our home page using this navigator.push replacement method. So why we want to do the navigation like this is it will rebuild the future builder widget which we have in our home page so that our to-dos are in sync and updated after creation of each to-do in the create to-do page. Now let's restart the application by hitting this run button. So we have restarted the application. Now let's click on this floating action button to create a new to-do. So now we are in the create new to-do page. We want to enter a title and a description. And let's click on create to do. So as you can see, we have our to do here. Now let's add another to do. Let's click on create to do. So you can see we have our to dos here. And suppose I want to check it as done. So I'll click on this check button. So it's now checked. I want to have some padding here. This button is very close to this text field. So let's go to our create to do page. And then let's add here a sized box. And give it some height. Say 20. And now let's save it. Hot reload. Looks good. Now also here I want to align the user details to left. So let's go back to our home page, and then in this column I'll define the cross-axis alignment as cross-axis alignment dot start. Great. It's not the best UI out there, but it's looking good to me. Now let's go to our Appwrite project, and in the to-dos collection, if I go to documents, then here you can see we have these two to-do documents. Now, if I click on this logout button, I'm logged out. Now, if I go to a new account, let's create a new account. Then click on sign up. So I have a new account named Anand. And then if I create a new to-do, create to do. I'll create another to do. Create to do. So I have two to dos in this account as well. Now, if I reload this page, then you can see we have a total of 4 documents in our to dos collection, but we are just getting the to dos which are created by this particular user. Now let's check this task 2 as done. And if I reload this page, then you can see that task 2 to do of this account is also checked as done. And if I uncheck this and reload, then the is done value is not available. So it's working perfectly. Now let's delete this task. If I reload, then you can see that we just have 3 tasks and the second task of this account is deleted. Now we want to add in last features of our to-do application. That is, we should have a delete all to-dos button, and then we should have different pages to view all the finished tasks and unfinished tasks. This looks very odd. Let's have the user name and user email at the center of this app bar. Let's go back to our home page, and then we want to remove this cross-axis alignment or just make it center. That should work. Let's place the user name and the user email absolutely at the center. So here in the app bar, in the leading parameter, let's give it a empty sized box. so that when we center title it, this column widget is present exactly at the center. So I'll use center title and pass true. So now the column should be at the center. Okay. And now we want to use this cross-axis alignment dot center method. Now if I save it, our text fields are now aligned at the center of this app bar. Now we are good to go with adding our final functionalities. So in the homepage app bar, we want to have a more pop-up menu where we will have all of these features. First, let's create 2 new screens in our screen folder, completed to-dos and unfinished to-dos page. As you can see, the completed to-dos page and the unfinished to-dos page are exactly similar with the home page. Inside the scaffold widget, in body, we have a future builder, and here we have changed the future to get completed to-dos. And here also we are storing the list of to-do models in this data variable. And using this list of to-do models, we are using a list view builder widget here to build the list styles. And similar to this, we have our unfinished to-do page where we have just changed the future in our future builder to get unfinished to-dos so that we just get documents where the is done value is false. And then using this data, we have a list view builder widget here which builds the list styles. Now let's go back to our home page. In the actions, we want to show a more actions pop-up menu. So we'll just remove this icon button. Now in our homepage app bar, we have added this pop-up menu button, clicking on which we have this pop-up menu. Here we have defined all of those pop-up menu items. It requires a value, so we have given each pop-up menu item a value. And as a child, we have used a row widget here. And then we have a icon widget, a size box widget to give it some padding. And then we have a text label. So we have the unfinished task pop-up menu button and the completed task pop-up menu button, delete all task pop-up menu and the logout pop-up menu. Here when we are selecting any of the pop-up items, we are also passing the item menu value here, and then using this menu value we want to perform some operation. Like when the value is 1, that means we want to go to our unfinished to-do page. When the value is 2, we want to go to our completed to-dos page. When the value is 3, we want to call this delete all to-dos function, and when the value is 4, we simply want to log out. So we are calling this logout function from our APIs class, and we are also showing this snack bar saying logout, and we want to go to our login page using this navigator.push replacement method. Now let's restart our application by just clicking on this run button, performing hot restart. You can see now we have this pop-up menu button, and when I click on this pop-up menu button, if we go to unfinished tasks, we should have this unfinished task. There should be one task. As you can see, we have the unfinished tasks here. And if we go to completed tasks, nothing to show now because we don't have any completed tasks. If I click on this delete all task, this task must be deleted. You can see that the only task we had for this account doesn't exist anymore. And fourth, we have this logout button. So now let's restart our application. And as you can see, now also we don't have any task. Now if we go back to our console and check our database, we shouldn't have any tasks for this user Anand. Now let's refresh this. You can see that in this to-dos collection, we just have 2 task documents and they are not for the user Anand. So now I want to add in some new tasks. So here I have 4 tasks. If I reload this page, then now we have a total of 6 tasks. These 4 tasks have the same user ID because they are created by the same user Anand. Now if I check this and check this as done, and let's refresh this, you can see that have some water task is done. And if I now go to completed tasks, we have these 2 tasks. And if I go to uncompleted tasks or unfinished tasks, then we have task 3 and task 1. So everything is working perfectly. You can see that the application is able to load all of my user tasks. And if I log out, Then I'm logged out and I'm in the login page. Suppose I want to log in as Asutosh Ranjan. Then you can see that we also have our 2 tasks here. If I want to add a new task, so I have added a new task, and if I delete this task and let's refresh this, then you can see I don't have the task 2 anymore. So it's working perfectly. Even here, when I go to unfinished tasks, we will have these 2 tasks and we don't have any completed tasks, so it shows nothing. If I now click on delete all tasks, then it will delete all the tasks for this user. And now if I reload, our collection just has 4 tasks and it has deleted all the tasks for our user Asutosh Ranjan. Now if I add a new task and if we reload, you can see that our final task is also added. Our app is complete, so let's check it as done. So with this, we are done with our first to-do app using Flutter and Appwrite. So congratulations, we have made a complete to-do app with all the core functionalities. You can style and modify the app according to your needs. You can find the source code of this application on GitHub. I'll mention the repository link in the description. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you like the series. See you in the next one.